Thank you so much for gathering here with us today. Special thank you to Satitra and Bhakti for having us here, gathering us here tonight. I'm just here for a quick introduction, but my name is Aida. I'm a recent graduate of NYU. We gather in remembrance and in solidarity, marking the day that forever altered the course of our lives and our history, Nakba Day. It is a day that carries the weight of loss, the pain of displacement, and the unwavering spirit of our Palestinian people. Initially coined to describe the mass displacements following the establishment of Israel in 1948, leading to over 700,000 Palestinians being uprooted from their homes, the concept of Nakba extends to include subsequent significant displacements. The Nakba of 1967 during the Six-Day War, further exacerbating this trauma, with Israel's capture of the West Bank and Gaza Strip displacing additional thousands of Palestinians, many of whom had already endured displacement in 1948. This event marked another profound setback in the Palestinian narrative of loss and dispossession. In contemporary context, the ongoing Nakba reflects a continuous process of displacement and disenfranchisement, manifesting in land confiscations, home demolitions, and the systematic encroachments on Palestinian rights and territories. Today, this reality persists. In the current ongoing genocide in Gaza, millions have been displaced, forced from their homes, and stripped of their livelihoods. Over 40,000 innocently massacred in a relentless campaign of violence. There are no schools, no access to clean water or food for countless families. Humanitarian aid is routinely raided and destroyed, and the people of Palestine are subjected to collective punishment on a horrifying scale. In this continuum of loss, my grandfather Zeki's story stands as a testament to the unspoken pain and resilience woven into the fabric of our lives. During the turmoil of 1948, my Sido, a young boy at the time, was uprooted from his childhood home in Eriha, now Jericho, and was displaced once again in 1967. Each displacement etching deeper scars into our lineage. Yet, amidst this heartache, he preserved a sanctuary of memories, rich with the vibrancy of Palestinian life. These stories were my heritage. My father inherited this mantle of memory, choosing to shield us from the stark realities of our history, instead nurturing within us an undying love for our homeland. He taught us of the beauty and the strength found in our traditions, hoping to arm us with love before we face the world's harsh truths. Ultimately, this approach made us vehemently and viscerally aware of how we must resist. Tonight, as we reflect on these narratives of endurance and loss, we are reminded of the power of memory and the vital role it plays in our struggle for justice. Students around the world have been inspiring leaders in this regard. The students have begun their own intifada, proving that Gaza will not be forgotten. On college campuses across the country, a powerful wave of activism has surged as students set up their own Gaza solidarity encampments. The use of tents in these protests is not random. It is a poignant reminder of the dire living conditions faced by millions, conditions often exacerbated by the alliances in which our universities are complicit. When students chose tents as a means of protest, they are not just critiquing an abstract policy. They are drawing a direct line between their institution's actions and the real-world consequences of those actions. Therefore, when university administrations crack down on a tent encampment on a campus, they not only suppress a powerful form of symbolic speech, but also perpetuate the very injustices the students are protesting. This action can be seen as an attempt to silence dissent and minimize public awareness of the institution's role in broader systemic issues, thereby prioritizing their image or financial interest over ethical considerations and human rights. But you see, the irony of this situation is profound. Institutions meant to champion intellectual and ethical growth are stifling those very pursuits, reflecting the broader societal conflicts between economic interests, political alliances, and human rights. As a recent graduate, I also want to emphasize scholasticide in Gaza with outrage. Not one university remains. Each student's dreams and aspirations are crushed beneath the ruins. Scholars are deliberately assassinated, and libraries containing our histories are obliterated, all in a vile effort to erase our voices. Schools have been forced to abandon their academic years because all their students have been massacred. It is for those reasons and many more that we remain steadfast and resolute. On your programs, there will be 2 QR codes for you to scan should you feel inclined to donate to relief in Gaza. I thank you all for being here and for never forgetting why we continue to organize together. With that, I am absolutely honored to introduce our next speaker, Ibtisam.
Thank you. Good evening, marhaba. Let me start by thanking, okay, I need to get, let me start by thanking Radical Books collection, Polis project, and the People Forum for organizing this event and for bringing us all together. Also for Bhakti and Sukitra for their work and for bringing us here. My name is Ibtisam Azim. I'm a Palestinian novelist and journalist based in New York. I am going to read from my novel, The Book of Disappearance, that I wrote and published in Arabic, but it was translated into English by Sinan Antoun. When I published The Book of Disappearance, I dedicated it to my maternal grandparents and my mother, who was a few months old when she and her family were forcibly displaced during the Nakba from Jaffa by Zionist militias and became internally displaced in their historic homeland, Palestine. Today, I would like to dedicate it to the Gazans who are facing another phase of the ongoing Nakba. I lived my life lonely, she used to say, even though her house was always full of guests, as I remember. But memory is a dense fog that spreads or clears as one gets older. I never understood why she spoke of herself in the past tense so often. Even when she laughed, and she used to love laughing, she would say, I used to love laughing. Oh, how I loved laughing. Tata died. I still get goosebumps whenever I say it. Tata died. I was relieved that she died without needing anyone, but she died. She took a bath before leaving the house, as if going to her own funeral. She was sitting in the middle of the wooden bench facing the sea. She was wearing her purple plissé skirt and a matching shirt under her black chiffon coat, without her tiny black purse this time. Or maybe somebody stole it from her. How did she get here? A see-through black scarf hid her hair. She never let it go white and would always dye it black. No one loves life the way we, the people of Manshiyeh and of the sea, do. She would always mock those who didn't groom themselves, as if only city folks and Jaffans knew how to do it. She liked to sit by the sea, often on the Arab beach near Ajami. But she loved that other spot at the top of the hill where I found her, especially the wooden bench. I never knew why. And she died here by the sea. She preferred to die in Jaffa rather than leave. Whenever I mentioned Jaffa's name, she would take a deep breath as if the city had all of a sudden betrayed her. At that moment, when I saw that her body was a corpse gazing at the sea, I realized that there were so many questions I had yet to ask her, but death and time beat me to them. I am mad at you. Your memory, which is engraved in my mind, has all these holes in it. Am I not remembering all that you told me, or was it incomprehensible? I was very young when I started listening to your stories. Later, when I turned to them for help, I discovered these holes. I started to ask you about them. But the more I asked, the more you got mixed up, or maybe I did. How would things not get mixed up? I was certain that there was another city on top of the one we live in it, dawning it. I was certain that your city, the one you keep talking about, which has the same name, has nothing to do with my city. It resembles it a great deal, the names, Orange Groves, Al-Hamra Cinema, Iskandar Awad Street, Al-Nuzha Street. Where do all these names come from? We would be walking and you start mentioning other names. Names not written on signs. I had to learn to see what you were seeing. And all those people. I got to know all their problems and how they were forced to leave Jaffa. I knew all the boring and, at times, interesting details about their lives. I knew all the jokes they used to tell, all this without having even met a single one of them, and probably I will never do well. Your Jaffa resembles mine, but it's not the same. Two cities impersonating each other. You carved your names in my city, so I feel like I'm a returnee from history, always tired, roaming my own life like a ghost. Yes, I'm a ghost who lives in your city. You too are a ghost living in my city, and we call both cities Jaffa. Thank you. And next, Najla Saeed.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Najla Saeed. I am half Palestinian, half Lebanese. I am a writer and an actor. And also sometimes in these circles, I'm known as Edward Said's daughter. I'm only saying that because I'm going to read something from the other side of my family, my non-Palestinian family, even though my dad did lose his home when he was 13 years old and was forced to leave Palestine. My mother was Lebanese, and her mother was an educator in Lebanon, and she was very politically active and very pro-Palestinian. She wrote a memoir, and in it, she detailed what happened during the Nakba, but also the many Palestinian students who ended up at her school as boarders because of what had happened in Palestine. So I just want to read a little section of that part of the book because I think it's beautiful, but also it may be, well, to me, it was quite reminiscent of what's happening right now. Okay. British forces were still responsible for the security of Palestine, but they did not intervene to crush the Zionists as they had crushed the Arab revolt 10 years earlier. Rather, they announced they would evacuate within a year without providing any plan for the country's future. By contrast to the French in Lebanon, the British had never set up any semblance of a local government in Palestine to operate as a junior partner with the British mandate. More and more Palestinians fled, and as our school year began in October, we received more of their terrified children. A 14-year-old girl named Samia wrote her parents that year. Uncle visits me every day. He always takes me to the cinema on Sunday, but I miss you all. I would rather not see the cinema, but see you. Will you come before the Jews set on fire the roads? They say there are no more cars and the railway road is dynamited. Can you come by boat? My friend Noha and her family went to Egypt. She cries all the time, afraid of not being able to see them again. Did you hear about them or her uncles? How terrible is war. I hate it with all my heart. Can no one stop it? You once said the English army can stop it. Is it true? Why don't they do so? I have left in my drawer my golden watch, the pretty watch you gave me last year. My album is there. Please bring it with you too. Please come, even if you do not find the watch and album. A girl told me that when the people search for their things, they find nothing. The Jews have stolen away all the gold and silver. Is it true our house is now empty and new people have taken possession of it? The Zionists were openly carrying out arms deals with Czechoslovakia and the Western countries at this time. During the fighting, Israel secured 50 of the most modern fighter aircraft from Czechoslovakia, reported Colonel Eddy. I do not recall that any US congressmen or editors denounced this arms traffic. 50 jets will not kill the US economy. Only more Arabs live or die. Who cares whether Arabs live or die? On November 29, 1947, The United Nations ratified the partition plan for Palestine. It called for the establishment of a Jewish state, an Arab state, and an international area around Jerusalem. Fighting began almost immediately. Having won the battle for world opinion, the Zionists expanded deeper into Arab territories. Into this world of pain, my last baby was born in December 1947. There were complications and I had to be carried to the hospital at midnight, but luckily my little boy was saved through the best medical care available. We named him Sammy. We had 4 beautiful children now and we were joyful. At the same time, I thought, what of the hundreds of mothers and mothers-to-be who are adrift in the wind, homeless, or living in bombarded cities pursued by terrorism and violence? In the early months of 1948, Arabs and Jews died in the streets. Bombing of crowded cafes and theaters, dynamiting of public buildings, looting, these were regular events. Many civilians were murdered in cold blood. On April 9th, members of the Irgun, along with commandos from the Stern Gang and the Haganah, slaughtered 254 defenseless men, women, and children in the village of Deir Yassin. They put 25 village men in lorries and paraded them around Jerusalem before taking them to a stone quarry where the men were executed. This terrible incident created a panic in many other Arab villages, and a large-scale exodus gained momentum. The same night, the Irgun and Stern invited the foreign press for cookies and tea to explain their act as a necessary military operation. Hassan, a Palestinian boy of 12, boarding with us at the Ahliya school, wrote to his parents. Omar, the driver, told me there is a fire all over Palestine. He said they have burnt the harbor in Jaffa and they have killed all the sailors. Jaffa is a sad place. There is war in the city and people are running away into the villages. But even the villages are on fire. They are burning the trees. Please come before they block the road. Jaffa had been designated an Arab city by the partition plan. The Irgun attacked it on April 25th. Where there had been 55,000 Arab residents, only about 4,000 remained in Jaffa after the assault. On May 14th, a day before the British mandate expired, the Jews declared their state of Israel, then Arab armies attacked. On May 20th, the UN appointed Count Folk Bernadotte to mediate a peace settlement. Building castles in the air about his wise plans, I was among many Arabs who believed, here comes a savior who will bring us out of darkness and into light and justice. Thank you.
Masal khair. Thank you all for being here. My name is Huda Fakhreddin. I teach Arabic literature at the University of Pennsylvania, where the administration called the police last Friday to shut down our encampment. Student encampments across campuses in this country are the only safe, inclusive space. These students were teaching us for 2 weeks at Penn and on other campuses the true meaning of community, of courage, of integrity. They were saying no to genocide, and they were offering administrations an opportunity to be more than pawns, more than lowly, despicable tools of corrupt power, but universities responded with violence. They can tear down encampments, but they cannot kill this movement. Gaza is the beginning and the end of time, and there is no direction for time from this moment on except towards a free Palestine. I am going to read for you tonight from a long poem by Ibrahim Nasrallah titled Philistini, Palestinian. Ibrahim Nasrallah is one of the most prominent writers in the world. He's a novelist and a poet. He began as a poet and turned into a novelist, but in this moment of massacre, he seems to have found poetry the only means of expression possible. Ibrahim was our guest at the University of Pennsylvania in September at the Palestine Rights Literary Festival, and I was very naive. I thought this university was going to be grateful for the opportunity of having more than 120 Palestinian artists and writers and translators and dancers on its campus, but instead they called in the counterterrorism units. Shameful, shameful. But it's happening. Palestine is almost free. I will read the opening and the ending of this poem. I will start with the English and then the Arabic. Palestinian. I was silent and nothing came of it. I spoke and nothing came of it. I cursed, I apologized, and nothing came of it. I was busy, I pretended to be busy, and nothing. I sat, I walked, I ran, I shivered, I warmed up, nothing. I was parched until I cracked, I drank until I drowned, and nothing came of it. I crumbled like a fetus, like the father, the siblings, and the mother. I was gathered in a shroud made of old curtains, and nothing came of it. I stumbled more than I could stand, but then I stood up, and nothing came of it. I prayed until, like a prophet, I became a verse in a holy book. I rode until I reached hell. I beseeched, I begged, and nothing. I raged and calmed and remembered what was once distant and forgot what was always close. I befriended a monster. I battled a monster. I died young and sometimes survived. And both times I grew old from all that I had seen, and nothing came of it. I charged, I withdrew, I fought the wind when it blew. I reconciled with the waves when I rose and raged. Among the horses, my heart was a horse, and in the night, my grief was a night, and nothing came of it. صمت ولم يجدي هذا. تكلمت لم يجدي هذا. شتمت اعتذرت ولم يجدي هذا. انشغلت تشاغلت لم يجدي هذا. جلست مشيت ركضت ارتجفت تدفأت لم يجدي هذا. عطشت إلى أن تشققت ثم شربت إلى أن غرقت. تفتت مثل جنين ومثل أبيه وإخوته أمه وتجمعت في كفن من بقايا الستائر لم يجدي هذا. تعثرت أكثر مما نهضت ثم نهضت ولم يجدي هذا. وصليت حتى تحولت مثل نبي إلى آية في الكتاب. وجدفت حتى بلغت الجحيم. دعوت توسلت لم يجدي هذا. غضبت هدأت لم يجدي هذا. تذكرت ما كان يوما بعيدا. تناسيت ما كان دوما قريبا. وآخيت وحشا وقاتلت وحشا. قتلت صبيا وحينا نجوت. وفي الحالتين هرمت لأني رأيت الذي قد رأيت ولم يجدي هذا. اندفعت انكفأت وعركت ريحا تهب علي. وصالحت موجا يثور ويعلو. وكان لقلبي في الخيل خيل وكان لحزني في الليل ليل ولم يجدي هذا. I am all these elements, O God. Fire, earth, wind, and water. Their fifth is a pain that blind songs can't see. Their sixth is this immense loneliness. And their seventh, since my slaughter is blood. When I burned, I inhabited the letters of my free name like a butterfly. Palestine. When my roof was suddenly blown off into the sky and with it a wall, a window, and the youngest of my children, I gathered myself in the G and the A and the Z and the A. I became Gaza. 1,000 warplanes circled and hit me. I collapsed and collapsed again, and then I rose in a scream. I called out, and nothing came of it. Nothing came of it. I lost faith and lost faith and believed again, and nothing came of it. And the despicable world still asks me, all of this, what for and what of it? I'm shaking. We're all shaken, right? أنا كل هذه العناصر يا رب. نار تراب وريح وماء وخامسها وجع لا تراه الأغاني الضريرة. سادسها أن تكون وحيدا وسابعها مذ ذبحت دماء. وحين احترقت سكنت حروف اسمي الحر مثل الفراشة. فاء ولام وسين وطاء وياء ونون. وإذ طار سقفي يتبعه للسماء جدار ونافذة وصغيري الأخير. تجمعت في العين والزين والتاء أصبحت غزة. تجمعت في الغين والزين والتاء أصبحت غزة. 1000 من الطائرات أتت ورمتني. تهدمت ثانية وتهدمت ثم تصاعدت في صرخة وهتفت ولم يجدي هذا، لم يجدي هذا. كفرت وآمنت ثم كفرت وآمنت ولم يجدي هذا ولم يجدي هذا. ويسألني عالم وسخ كل هذا لماذا؟ Thank you. We're calling each other out. The next speaker on, yes, Maza. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. A brief announcement before I start reading. You will see on your program 2 barcodes on one page. This is an opportunity to make donations to UNRWA or to the Gaza and Abu Sita Children's Fund. I heard recently, or I read recently, that there's an estimate that it would take $50 billion to rebuild Gaza. We can do something now. Last summer with PALFest, I had the opportunity to travel to the West Bank and Jerusalem with my good friend Itbisam. I had an encounter in Hebron with an Ethiopian-Israeli soldier. And I was asked at some point after that to pick a word connected to photography and to write a definition for that word. So I picked double exposure. What is the word? Manipulation or imagination? Another way to say this is simply yes, and to add I see, and to recognize that what is exposed is nothing less than a folding back of time so that one moment embraces another. But I do not mean embrace. What I mean is 75 kilometers from Jerusalem, I stepped on the dead and felt the give of asphalt beneath my feet as a man's voice broke. See also Al-Lid. You feel the inclination to look away, the dead say, because you haven't seen enough. It should be easy, after all. One image stays in place while another lays itself on top. Why did I not want to mention embrace? What then do we call the land when it draws our bones close and refuses to let go? What is exposed? What is doubled? There is a poet in Al-Lid who plants himself on asphalt and says the land is what it is. What is doubled is false. What is dead still lives. We stand in front of the mosque and listen. The dust steadies us, the dead say. Ash holds us in place. In Hebron, a soldier asks me, "What are you doing here?" But what he means to ask is, what am I going to do with you here in Hebron? You who are standing in my skin, which is also your skin, speaking to me in my other tongue, which is also your other tongue. Both of us stare at his uniform, his rifle, his hand puncturing air as he races towards me. The dead rise between us. Hold still, they say. Ethiopia, he asks me. But what he really means is, let me see who you are without these dead, without that fold in time. What he means is, Let the bones go where they wish, and the living will forget. Last week, I walked with a tree that was waving a dictionary in the air. It shouted, "Who will recognize the catastrophe of language?" Then it looked at me and ripped a page from the book. "Steady," it said. "Steel," it said. And next is Nadia.
Hi, everyone. Nadia is not here, so I'm going to be speaking. My name is Valerie Grun. I wrote a little something. So I'm a registered nurse and a humanitarian aid worker, and I spent the last decade of my life working in many war zones around the world. Here's something I wrote. It's okay. The sound of an ambulance approaching the hospital gate at high speed. A little 5-year-old girl hit by a mortar attack is lifted out of the ambulance. She has deep wounds on her left leg, and her left arm is starting to turn blue. She's still awake, but I can't stop noticing that her confusion is masked by cries and periods of sleep. She lost her mother and siblings in this attack. Her father, who survived the attack, was transferred to another hospital. I comb her brown hair back from her face with my hands, take off her earrings, and transfer her to our operation theater. I place her earrings in a little bag to save them for her. I think that perhaps her earrings are something by which she can remember her mother. Then I saw it. A screaming father, holding his unconscious child, came running in. The outline of the father's ribs could be seen through his ripped shirt. Tears etched lines across the dust on his face, an expression of the paralysis of fear. Sometimes I remember this as if it happened in slow motion. It was surreal and looked like a TV news clip, but then I realized that he was actually running towards me. I quickly snapped out of it. I took the boy from him and applied oxygen to the child's face, which was missing a chunk of flesh from the left cheek. I looked up and saw 4 more children get carried in, one missing his nose. People's faces and eyes painted the horrors they had lived through. And if they still had their limbs, their feet were raw from walking barefoot for kilometers to reach the nearest hospital. I was not in Gaza. These are my memories from Mosul. 7 years have passed since, but I still see these horrors like they happened just yesterday. Yet they are happening. They're happening to you in Gaza. As I watch your nightmare unfold from afar, I relive mine. Dearest healthcare worker, I know the frightening sight of the injuries you see, crushed and blown apart. I know what it feels like to hold a malnourished baby and the sound of their inaudible cries. I remember what it's like to receive the limp body of a child from a screaming parent, begging and looking at us with despair and hope that we will save them. I know the smells you're smelling. I know the fear of getting attacked while working in a hospital, a place deemed as a safe space under international humanitarian law. I know the exhaustion from not sleeping. I know what it feels like to look for the parents of a child that is brought in injured and now an orphan. I remember the fear I felt with every explosion, along with the vibrations that go through your body and into your organs, and the relief you feel afterwards when realizing that every explosion you hear actually means that you're still alive. Dearest healthcare worker, I spoke to some friends that I worked with in Mosul and who recently worked with you in Gaza, and they told me it's even worse. I struggle to find the words for you because I'm not with you, and I'm truly sorry for this. Dearest healthcare worker, I also want to mention that beyond these memories, I also remember the good ones. I remember the smiles and tears of joy when families were reunited. I remember the happiness of the patients we discharged that we did not think would survive. I remember the relief we felt when my coworkers came to work because it meant that we all made it through the night. I remember finding the uncle of a child that was believed to be an orphan with the help of the community who knew where her mother was and eventually reunited them. And I remember the simple moments as well. A conversation, a neighbor wiping my tears, a game of cards to distract from the incessant bombardment. As we solemnly commemorate the Nakba today, I want you to know that we honor you and everything you do. I write this letter to you, dearest healthcare worker, to remind you to stay strong, to hold on to the beautiful moments, no matter how small they may be. But mostly I write to you to remind you that we love you. Love always, Valerie Grun. Thank you. Mona Alta Habi.
Hello everyone, my name is Mona Tahawi. I'm Egyptian. I was born in 1967, weeks after the Nakba. And in 1998, exactly 26 years ago, I was a Reuters correspondent in Palestine, and I went to Fawar refugee camp in Nablus to interview Palestinians on the 50th anniversary of the Nakba. And one of the people I interviewed has stayed with me ever since. It was a man who was 100 years old. And he was the embodiment of what our Palestinian comrades mean when they say existence is resistance. And I think of him often. The more we read about the Palestinian children, the more we read about the savagery, Israel's savagery in Gaza, and the Palestinian children that it wipes out, because this is what this genocide is doing. This is what this genocide aims to do, to erase and end the existence of Palestinians. And we're here to say that they will continue and they will be free. And I am reading the words of one Palestinian for you tonight to mark this anniversary. This is from an interview by the new internationalist of Layla Khalid. Layla Khalid is the first known woman to lead an airplane hijacking. Why did you hijack a plane? Layla Khalid, our goal was to release our prisoners, especially women, and to raise awareness internationally about the Palestinian cause. We wanted the world to know we are not just refugees who need aid and live in tents. We are a people with a cause. I didn't care if I was the first woman hijacking a plane or not. I just wanted to do something for our cause. Of course, we knew we weren't going to liberate Palestine with hijackings, but it was a way to get international attention. I had a hand grenade in my pocket and a pistol. Then, oh, I'm sorry, I need to go to the beginning. I missed something important. That wasn't the first question. How did your involvement in politics begin? When did you decide to join the armed struggle? After we were driven out of Palestine in 1948, we settled in the south of Lebanon in Sur as refugees. It was a miserable life. We were deprived of everything. My first school was a tent. I didn't like anything there. I missed Palestine. I was convinced we had to go back to our house. I was young, but I asked myself, why do we have to live like this? I began to be involved in political issues when my brothers and sisters were in the Arab nationalist movement, A&M. Our dream was to go back to Palestine. We had to defend our right to return, so we went to demonstrations and called for the right to hold arms. In 1967, the Nakba, the defeat of Arab armies in the Six-Day War, gave us motivation to take up arms and participate in the revolution. The A&M decided to establish the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, PFLP, and I joined as soon as it was formed. I felt we had to take the cause into our own hands. We couldn't rely on the Arab regimes to take us back to our land. We had to depend on ourselves. Why did you hijack a plane? And this is what I said earlier. Our goal was to release our prisoners, especially women, and to raise awareness internationally about the Palestinian cause. I didn't care if I was the first woman hijacking a plane or not. I just wanted to do something for our cause. Of course, we knew we weren't going to liberate Palestine with hijackings, but it was a way to get international attention. I had a hand grenade in my pocket and a pistol. Then I met my PFLP comrade, Salim Isawi. We had clear instructions not to hurt anyone. I told the pilot I was the new captain and showed him the hand grenade. I told him we are Palestinians from PFLP, we are refugees, and the name of our unit is Che Guevara. When we started reaching Palestine, I asked the pilot to take us to Haifa. My comrade was also from there. To this moment, I can't describe the feeling, the excitement of seeing what was taken from us. Then we diverted the plane to Syria, to Damascus. I apologized to the passengers. I told them I was very sorry if they were afraid. I told them they were safe. We didn't hurt anyone. The passengers were all released and went back to their homes, but we didn't go back to our homes. We are still refugees. Question. Israel, the United States, and the European Union consider the PFLP a terrorist organization. What is terrorism to you? Layla Khalid. Terrorism is occupation. To steal our land and our houses and to make us refugees. Zionist gangs committed massacres. They eradicated more than 463 villages to build settlements. Every day you see people being killed in Palestine. The Israeli army is shooting to kill. Let's think of the journalist Shireen Abu Akleh. She was killed just because she spoke about the reality on the ground. What we see is daily violence, but we are also seeing a new intifada in the occupied territories. Is there a role for violence in the struggle for a better world? Layla Khalid. We don't have another way. We don't have the luxury of choice. We can't face all this injustice with just demonstrations and peaceful means. Freedom requires sacrifices. We are sad for the casualties, but for Palestinians, the line between life and death is very narrow. All people under occupation revolt for their freedom against colonial oppression. International law says people under occupation have the right to defend themselves even by armed struggle. This is a legal way to fight against the violence of occupation. We saw how the world dealt with Ukrainians, but they forgot about us. The Nakba is ongoing. Question. Did becoming a mother change your way of fighting and your perception of the struggle? What has been your experience as a woman in a movement that is predominantly male? Layla Khalid. In the beginning, I was with the military faction of the PFLP, but I also had to work as a woman and speak about the rights of women. The revolution is for everyone, even when we are mothers. Being a revolutionary doesn't mean that I only fight. I have a right to love and to be loved, to become a mother and a grandmother. Question. How do you imagine a free Palestine? The key for liberation is the land and the return of refugees. We want to establish a democracy where all have the same rights and duties. We want to do this with the people who are there, with Israelis. This is a humane and democratic solution, and it can be established. I had a Jewish friend, my neighbor. Her name was Tamara. We used to play together. We knew our neighbors were Jews, but they were also Palestinian. When we fled, I asked my mom if Tamara was coming with us, and my mother said no. I don't know where Tamara is now, but she should remember me. I was her friend. Question. What would be the first thing you would do if you were able to go back to Haifa? I would run, Layla Khalid. I would run to see if our house is still there. I imagined people chanting, dancing, and I would sleep under an orange tree. I used to hate oranges because when I wanted to pick them from our relatives' trees in Lebanon, my mother scolded me and said, "Those are not our oranges. Our oranges are in Palestine." Thank you. Thank you. Next is Sean Jacobs.
I'm quite tall, so I hope this works. So my name is Sean Jacobs. I'm originally from South Africa, and I basically spent the first 2 decades of my life living under apartheid. And as a South African, what is happening in Palestine and it has happened in Palestine is very familiar to us. Colonial violence, apartheid, political repression, political violence. These are things that we're very familiar with. And I was reminded, when I was coming here, I was reminded of something that I wrote at the time when, in January, South Africa took Israel to the International Court of Justice, in which, when the South African lawyers appeared in front of the court, as a South African, they said out loud things, and I wrote this, they said out loud things that to many South Africans seems self-evident, but that are often suppressed in public discourse about Israel-Palestine in the West. They said the word apartheid, they said the word Nakba, the year Israel became a state. That same year, South Africa established legal apartheid, which contributed to a process of forced removals of black South Africans, including my father and his family, from their lands and homes. So it's with that background that I'm going to read a poem by a South African poet. I don't have my own poetry, so I'm going to read somebody else's. I want to read a poem by Dennis Brutus. Dennis was imprisoned on Robben Island and was the de facto leader of the sports boycott against South Africa between the late 1950s and the end of the 1980s. Especially, he led the campaigns to have apartheid South Africa banned from the Olympic Games, FIFA, professional tennis, and international rugby and cricket, sports that had become synonymous with white South African identity. After the end of apartheid, he turned his attention to the negative effects of globalization, global apartheid, US militarism, and neo-colonialism, the very issues that we are fighting about now. Dennis died in 2009 at the age of 89. The poem I will read is called Sharpeville and was published in 1973. It refers to a violent event on March 21, 1960, when apartheid police shot and killed 70 black people in a town to the south of Johannesburg. These people had refused to carry passbooks, a system designed to control black people's movements, just like the checkpoints do to Palestinians in Israel now. So let me read the poem. What is important about Sharpeville is not that 70 died, nor even that they were shot in the back, retreated, unarmed, defenseless, and certainly not the heavy caliber slug that tore through a mother's back and ripped through the child in her arms, killing it. Remember Sharpeville, bullet in the back day, because it epitomized oppression and the nature of society more clearly than anything else. It was the classic event. Nowhere is racial dominance more clearly defined. Nowhere the will to oppress more clearly demonstrated. What the world whispers, apartheid with snarling guns, the bloodlust after South Africa spills in the dust. Remember Sharpeville, remember bullet in the back day, and remember the unquenchable will for freedom. Remember the dead and be glad. Next up is Emna Zal. Sorry.
Hi everyone, happy to be the African following, another African person. My name is Emna Zghal, I'm from Tunisia, and I'm gonna read you a poem published in 2017, and that from a poet, his name is Nasser Rabah, keep that in mind. Myself, Amiel Al-Kalai, and Khalid Al-Hili, we are working on translation a book of his poetry that should be due next year. I shall start by reading the Arabic. شرفة معلقة في السماء. لست جنديا ولكنني رأيتني في الحرب بسترة عسكرية حين أشتري الخبز وحين أنام وحين أبعث بعد آخر الأخبار حيا. أنسق البارود على جانبي طريق المقبرة، أزرع ما تيسر من شظايا في حقول الذاكرة، كلما يحصد النسيان مغفرة وأصدقاء. كلما قطعوا ذراعي أرفع راية السأم التي لا تنحني. أوصل الأبناء للآباء والفقراء للفقراء، وأكمل عد دمع الأمهات لمسبحة الحكاية. أنير عتمة القلب بشمع الخوف، أوزعه على الحيطان عندما يبدأ القصف آية آية. أرمم ما تهدم من جدار الوقت، أقطف ما تفتح من رصاص أعدائي، أعلم الأولاد إن كبروا مواقيت الصلاة على البلاد. لست جنديا ولكني رأيتني في الحرب شرفة معلقة في السماء. بعدما اغتالوا البناية أرقبوا كيف يهرع الجيران نحو شواطئ الأسفلت قبل موجة القصف الجديدة، كيف تنجو من إصابتها البيوت بفعل أخطاء طيار حديث السن وبراعة صاحب الكاميرا الذي حمل صورتها إلى المشفى، وصدفة أن وجدوا طبيبا ماهرا في إصابات البيوت، وكيف سيارة الإسعاف تجلس عند باب القهر مثل امرأة ذوبها الحمل ودوختها الشمس آب. لست جنديا ولكني رأيتني في الحرب ملائكة أصفق للجنود، أما تغسل الأكفان، بيتا يشد ثياب سكان عادوا كلما خرجوا كي يطمئن البيت. أدل رأيتني على جيبي بريد القذيفة، ثم أجعدها مثل فاتورة كهرباء. أحفظ للأولاد طابتهم لبعد الحرب، ربما عادوا بلا سيقان. أنتظر البكاء فلا يجيء، لأنه مثلي أضاع في الحرب ساعته وظله وظل هكذا بلا أصدقاء. من يرفع الأولاد نحو الله قبل صليبهم؟ من يوقف الأحياء من الطواف حول نشرة الأخبار من الجرف المطل على الخرافة؟ من يعطي المدينة حقها في الخبز قبل النوم والميناء؟ أن تمشي على مهل كأي مدينة على ماء الحياة. من يخرج المدني من سترة الجندي والجندي من سترة السياسي والسياسي من سترة الديني والديني من سترة الحمقى؟ من يخرج المدينة من تنكر الثياب للثياب؟ لست جنديا ولكني رأيتني في الحرب أرتب مشهد الموت الأخير حتى يعجب الأحياء موتي. A balcony hanging in the sky. I am no soldier, but I see myself in uniform during the war, when I'm buying bread, when sleeping, when I get resurrected after the latest news. I arrange gunpowder on both sides of the road leading to the cemetery. I plant whatever shrapnel comes in handy in the fields of memory. Anytime forgetfulness reaps forgiveness and friends. Each time they sever my arm, I raise the flag of tedium that never bends. I bring together the children and parents, the poor and the poor, and I finish counting mother's tears for the prayer beads of the story. I light the darkness of the heart with the candle of fear. I portion it out on the wall when bombing starts, a verse each. I restore what has been demolished of the walls of time. I pick what has blossomed of my enemy's ammunition, and I teach the kids, if they ever grow older, the time schedule to pray for the country. I am no soldier, but during the war, I see myself a balcony hanging in the sky. And after they kill the building, I watch how the neighbors rush to asphalt beaches before the new wave of bombing. How homes survive their injuries because of a novice pilot's error, the talent of a cameraman who brought their picture to the hospital, and the luck they had finding a doctor there skilled in home injuries, and how the ambulance stands at the gate of injustice, like a woman pregnancy exhausted and the August sun made faint. I am not a soldier, but I see myself during the war an angel applauding soldiers, a mother washing shrouds, a home reassured by hanging the clothes of the residents who return every time they leave. I guide, I see myself, the missile mail to my pocket, and I crumble it like an electric bill. I save the ball for the kids, for after the war, they might return with no legs. I wait for tears, but they don't come. They too, like me, lost during the war their watch and shadow and remained like that, with no friends. Who will hoist the children to God before hoisting them to their cross? Who will stop the living from circling around the news like pilgrims? From the cliff overlooking the myth, who will give the city its share of bread before its sleep and port, for it to walk slowly like any other city on the water of life? Who will pull the civilian out of the military uniform, the military out of the uniform of the politician from the uniform of the clergy, and the clergy from the uniform of fools? And who will pull the city out from clothes disowning clothes? I am not a soldier, but I see myself during the war arranging the scene of the last death to please with my death the living. Thank you. Next is Suha Araj. Thank you.
Hi. Oh, well, okay. Hi, my name is Saha. I'm going to read something written by my brother, Ramzi Araj, in 2015. It was an essay featured in Letters to Palestine, edited by Vijay Prashad. Rereading this today was very hard to get through without cracking, so let's see how this goes. And it's not that short, so. Okay. This is my brother speaking, not me. My mother was born in Gaza. A United Nations report just said that Gaza may be uninhabitable by 2020. It's hard to think of Gaza as a refuge for anyone, but for my mom and her family, that's exactly what Gaza was, a refuge. My grandparents left their home in Beit Jala in 1949 for Gaza City, traveling with an Egyptian army caravan out of the West Bank. My grandfather had been arrested for organizing an opposition to Jordanian control of the West Bank after the war with Israel ended in 1949. After my grandmother somehow secured his release in the middle of the night, they left everything behind and took off as soon as they could. My grandmother was pregnant on the journey and eventually gave birth to 3 of her 6 children in Gaza, my mother included. Though Beit Jala, a small town just up the hill from Bethlehem and the birthplace of my father, is a place that would become my mother's home, the first 3 years of her life were spent in Gaza. She and her family returned to Beit Jala in 1954. No one in our family had ever gone back to Gaza. Then one day, nearly 50 years later, my cousin, Jackie Reem Saloom, heard Palestinian hip-hop being played on New York Public Radio station, and we decided we needed to go back. I was born in a small town in Ohio, shockingly the only Palestinian family in town. Like many Palestinian Americans, though, my family ensured that I developed a strong Palestinian identity. I was raised on stories like the one of my family's brief exile from Beit Jala and the more permanent ones to the United States, Honduras, Chile, Ecuador, among other countries. I watched the first Intifada on TV with my parents, getting shushed every time I tried to speak over the news coverage. I learned that my family back home in Palestine had it better than many other Palestinians, and I just felt lucky to be sitting in Ohio while my cousins my age were stuck under the occupation in the West Bank. I read as much as I could about history and the conflict. I wanted to know as much as possible. Still, despite my family's history there, I knew shamefully little of Gaza. Though I had traveled to Palestine with my family twice as a child, it wasn't until we started filming Slingshot Hip Hop, a documentary film on the emerging Palestinian hip-hop scene in Gaza, the West Bank, and inside of Israel, that I fully understood what being Palestinian meant. That's what happens when you go to Gaza. Jackie and I were so excited to show the world that Palestinians were doing something cool, hip-hop. After years of trying to explain the Palestinian-Israeli conflict using facts and figures about refugees, destroyed villages, checkpoints, settlements, and so on, I heard the passion and intensity of these lyrics set to a beat everything I had been trying to convey. As one older radio call-in listener from Gaza said after he heard Palestinian hip-hop for the first time, with all the partying and dancing, they will memorize the hell out of it. Soon, all the Americans will be singing our words. A little overly optimistic, yes, but still it was exciting. And it wasn't just any hip-hop. It was hip-hop that would make the South Bronx proud. Over mostly bootleg beats, the lyrics were about struggle, resistance, and survival. It was filled with anger and hope. We rushed over to Palestine as soon as we could to start filming. I traveled to Palestine several times for the production of Slingshot Hip Hop from 2003 to 2007. But it wasn't until my second trip in 2005 that I finally made it into Gaza. Getting into Gaza was hard, but almost laughably easy compared to the situation today, where humanitarian aid can barely get in. But still, the Palestinian hip-hop artists inside Israel that became the subjects of the film had never met any of the guys doing the same thing in Gaza. You had to get special permission from Israel to get in, and it was almost never given. Most often it's people trying to get out of Gaza and not get in. And for Palestinians in Gaza, you would wait a lifetime to get permission to leave that probably won't ever come. It was because the artists in Gaza were isolated from their contemporaries in the West Bank and Israel that it was even more important that we get there, both to include their story as a crucial component of the film and to help facilitate a connection with other Palestinian rappers outside Gaza. Although it was incredibly difficult for us to gain access to Gaza, we had a far better chance of getting in than the Palestinian MCs we had met in the West Bank and Israel. Oh. In fact, did I read that? No? Okay. In fact, Gaza was so isolated that the Palestinian MCs in Israel didn't even know that Palestinian hip-hop existed in Gaza until they saw the footage. They were floored, especially by how much the MCs in Gaza idolized them and tried to emulate them. The crowd that packed the Red Crescent Society for the first hip-hop show in Gaza looked like a family reunion. There were young and old, men and women, and of course, lots of children. The initial shock that was happening on stage soon turned into rousing cheers and everyone clapping to the beat. There was even breakdancing. At one point, the crowd, filled with pride, started chanting, Gaza, Gaza. For a few minutes in that building, Gaza didn't look very different from the rest of the world. But Gaza is different, and I wanted to see it for myself. After months of planning and weeks of uncertainty, Jackie and I received permission to enter through a contact with a local NGO. On our way to the Erez checkpoint, the single entrance from Israel to Gaza, we still had no idea if we would be able to get in. We had heard endless stories of people getting turned away from Gaza, and after our own 7-hour detention and interrogation at Ben Gurion Airport, we expected the worst. After a couple hours delay and relatively minor questioning from the Israeli soldiers, we were sent on our way, carrying our equipment on our backs through almost a mile-long checkpoint crossing. When we got to the other side, it was like the curtain had been pulled back from a lifetime of watching Gaza on the world stage. We immediately took a taxi to a barbershop in Gaza City where one of the young hip-hop artists from the group Palestinian Rappers, PR, worked. He demanded that he give me a haircut, even though I didn't want one. I obliged, or should I say, lost the argument. Sitting in that barber chair, the pictures of 90s boys band and Versace models hanging all over the walls, I kept on thinking, how bad can Gaza be? Looking back now, after multiple Israeli attacks that destroyed entire city blocks, killed thousands of civilians, and blockaded the entire Gazan population from the rest of the world, the answer is really, really bad. But while I was sitting in that chair, the only thing I knew for certain is that I wasn't going to let this young hip-hop barber glob on that enormous amount of hair gel that held over my head. Hair gel became a major theme of the trip in Gaza. One of the main artists in the film, Mohammed from PR, was on a constant search for his best hair gel. He must have bought 3 jars in the weeks we were there. Mohammed had been shot by Israeli soldiers in the arm at a protest a few years before. But it was like the one thing he cared about, the one thing he could be in charge of within the confines of total Israeli control of his life, was the stability of his hairdo. The gel was his weapon, and he was going to win. Everything in Gaza becomes relative. Just when you start to feel bad for someone, we would be introduced to someone who had it much worse. It was a sort of microcosm of Gaza as a whole. Just when you think things can't get worse there, it does. On levels that make the old bad seem good and the old good seem totally out of reach. When we met Ibrahim, though, I was sure that I'd seen the worst. Ibrahim was a late teenage MC who collaborated with PR and others in Khan Yunis in Gaza City. He dressed, quote, baggy, as all the guys like to call their stylish dress, with ridiculously oversized clothing that made American hip-hop artists seem like they were wearing slim-fitting clothing. He was tall and athletic and liked to play basketball. Ibrahim seemed like a pretty normal kid. When he took us to see where he lived, I wasn't prepared for what I would see. He lived in the Namasawi refugee camp on the outskirts of Khan Yunis. This was like the curtain behind the curtain. It looked post-apocalyptic. There weren't streets, just sand and rubble of buildings that had missiles dropped right through the center of them. The buildings that were standing looked like someone used the facades as target practice. I tried not to react and pretended that I wasn't shocked that people still lived in those buildings. I had been to Palestinian refugee camps before in the West Bank and in Lebanon, but this looked like another world. It's hard to use words to describe Gaza. I want people to see it, to feel it, to smell it, to know the depths of the devastation, but also the depths of the steadfastness of the people too. Luckily, that's what Ibrahim was able to do with his music. It's hard not to feel like a voyeur in those situations when you are passing through someone's difficult circumstances and asking to film it. Isn't that what Gaza has become? Just another thing that we watch happen over and over again. The horrors of each new Israeli assault, just another passing headline that we care about as long as the news tells us it's important. In between the bombings, daily life continues, and these daily realities matter. Among the day-to-day lives in Gaza are the stories of young people using creative form of resistance in the face of seemingly insurmountable oppression. Every time I think of Gaza, I think of the people I met there and how much worse it has gotten since my visit in 2005. I think back to every home I was invited into for tea and coffee by friends of friends and even strangers, and how happy they were to share what little they had, their pride unwavering even under sometimes impossible circumstances. I think of Ayman, one of the MCs from PR, whose father was killed in 2009 by an Israeli missile while sitting in his living room, and the firefighters who were killed by a second missile as they tried to rescue people from the building. It is a reminder of how close every person we met and every person in Gaza is to death. In one of the most densely populated places on earth, a place that has been described as an open-air prison, a place that is expected to have been driven into non-existence by 2020, the daily struggle for survival is an act of resistance. The young rappers we met were creating a soundtrack to this resistance. We should all be listening. It's crazy that that was written in 2015. Ayman, who is mentioned, just had a fundraiser. He runs the Delia Arts Group in Gaza, and he was just able to get out days before they invaded Rafah fully with most of his family. His mother stayed back with his brother because she didn't want to leave anyone behind. And the photos of that departure are quite hard to look at. Thank you. I want to welcome Mukama. Sorry.
No, thank you for the welcome and thank you for the organizers, especially Bhakti, in making this happen. But because I'm gonna forget, I'm gonna call the next person now. Just no, really. So when I get on the stage, then they'll know they're coming next. Okay, so after me it's gonna be Christina Danuja. Okay, that's settled. Yeah. All right. So. No, I do have a lot of things to say, but I know, but I also understand we have time limitations because, anyway, first I feel very held actually to be here, coming from Kenya and growing up in an oppressive society. It's the same thing with Sean Jacobs, like apartheid, right? So we are here also giving solidarity from growing up in giving solidarity from in very oppressive circumstances as well. And I want to say two things. Okay, somebody time me because I can talk for a long time. Okay, but anyway, so I'll keep to 5 minutes, but except I'm not timing myself. But anyway, so there are two things I want to mention before I read my poem, which is one, that I was in Kenya in February. I was in Kenya in February, right? I was in Kenya. I'm from Kenya, and I was there. But I ended up in a slum, right? You could call me an organic intellectual if you want, but no. But it turns out there are different levels of learning, right? There are always different levels of learning, right? So, and for me, it was being in this slum in it's called Kariobangi in Kenya, right? And, you know, the artist there, the artist from that slum had drawn a mural. This is why we need PowerPoint, because I could have shown you the photographs, you know. No, but they had drawn a mural for Palestine, right? That's one, right? So meaning that even while we are here, even while stuff is happening in Gaza and so on and so forth, that there is this, there's this ground swelling of support. And, you know, and fuck it, you know, fuck our leaders and fuck our, you know, or you know, our universities and so on and so forth. For not recognizing that the tide has shifted when it comes to Palestine, right? So that's what I learned in Islam, you know. And then I just got an email from, okay, a WhatsApp, okay, a WhatsApp message from. No, I just got a WhatsApp from a friend of mine who works with, actually she works in a slum, she works with the women from the slums, and the Palestinian embassy. So we have had floods in Kenya, right? So in spite of all that's happening in Palestine, right, the Palestinian embassy donated or found, okay, I don't know how much it was, but they donated money and help to the women and to the people in this slum as well, right? So, but it does say something about solidarity, right? It does say something about solidarity from the beginning. Anyway, and so this is a poem I wrote a long time ago, so I'm just going to read it. I call it a collage of death masks. I wrote it maybe in 2001, 2002, but it's about remembering revolutionaries or people who have died, actually, so we could be here, actually, right? So, okay, so I'm just going to read it, and then, well, then I'll be done. Oh, I thought I was loud. I thought everybody could hear me, but actually this sounds better. Anyway, yeah, so the poem begins with Garcia Lorca, you know the poet, because some of us here are poets, some of us here are writers, some of us are scholars and activists and so on and so forth. All right, so the whole idea about the poem, there was a time when I was fascinated with biographies and last moments of our revolutionaries, right? And sometimes you find them, sometimes you don't. But anyway, this is Garcia Lorca, right? Garcia, okay, you guys know Garcia Lorca, right? Yeah. So, and this is at the point when he's just about to get killed, right? All right, okay. Lorca. The distance between the bullet and my heart, I cannot remember the prayer my mother taught me. Tell her it was love that I used to negotiate this passage, that it was her love that shielded me, right? Okay, so with Garcia Lorca, okay, if you read the biography, that's almost quote for quote, actually, right? Okay, Che Guevara. Next door, a single bullet announces my comrade's death. Hours later, a key turns and I stand on my wounded leg. Shoot, coward. Your guillotine can only kill flesh, not the idea. My children live in a free Cuba. Rosa Luxemburg. Death and democracy infinite. Both we will realize, bring to fruition. Steve Biko. My blood on these walls, don't they know that black is a well that will never dry? Ken Saro-Wiwa. Okay, so can I okay, so I'm sorry to interrupt my own poem. No, because I've been thinking about, okay, so we have the genocide happening in Palestine, right? But okay, so part of being older, as Mona would agree. Okay, sorry. Okay, that was a legit. Okay, that was legit funny. No, because you get these memories, right? So part of it for me is in 1994. You have South Africa, okay, going back to what Sean was talking about, and apartheid and so on and so forth. So you have a South Africa that's, that's liberation and so on and so forth. But at the same time, you have the genocide unfolding in Rwanda, right? But the Rwandan genocide was telegraphed, right? It was telegraphed in the same way when Ken Saro-Wiwa, this activist from Nigeria, right? When he got killed, we all knew it was going to happen. We're old enough to know, right? so the idea that we can be here and to watch genocide happening is something, okay, fine, I'm preaching to the choir, but it's something that we shouldn't allow to happen. Anyway, okay. Okay, Cancer Owiwa. My blood spilled for this our earth, my last libation. Arthur Noje, he was a South African poet. This suicide, this final plunge, this my last poem, will it erase apartheid? Wayaki was a Kenyan revolutionary who was killed by the British, right? Wayaki. In my future, I see Kimathi always on his feet, arm in arms. Fanon. Complacency is wretchedness. In my militant servitude, I find freedom. Amilcar Cabral. For you, I have returned to the source. Malcolm X. I do not see bullets or death hurtling towards me. I only see freedom. Karimi Dudu. Okay, so Karimi Dudu was a Kenyan. How much time do you have left? Anyway, okay, so Karimi Dudu was a student leader at the Kenyan at Nairobi University, right? Who got killed by the Moi dictatorship in the 1990s. So, which is bringing me back to the student activism we are seeing now around, around Palestine, right? So, but anyway, so Karimi Dudu got killed by the Moi dictatorship. Anyway, Karimi Dudu. Possibility of life actualizes in the fact of freedom. I do not fear them or their death. Thank you.
Thanks, Mokoma, for telling everyone that I'll be coming much more in advance. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here. I'm Christina Danuja.
Oh, no, wait, really?
Yeah. Oh, unfortunately, that's me. I'm a Dalit woman writer from India living here in New York City. I come from a community that was formerly known as the untouchables, more commonly known as the outcasts. My ancestors lived and my siblings continue to live under the hegemonic structures of caste in India. Today I stand before you as a Dalit Christian, an embodiment of a tense, almost strained intersection. Part colonized, part liberated, off-caste, still Christian. A complication, if you will, but real nonetheless. I'm going to read to you today 3 pieces of poetry that speaks to this very real, complicated pain. The first 2 are from Binary Breaking Worship, a website for worship materials that uses inclusive language for people and an expansive language for God. Ever since Jesus suffered and died on the cross, an imperial tool of torture, terror, and humiliation, the most dehumanized and oppressed peoples of the world have seen themselves in Christ's execution. For them, Jesus expressed solidarity with all whom the empire criminalizes and murders, from untouchable Dalits to those who are lynched or shot around the world by virtue of who they are. And in the mid-1900s, the symbol of crucifixion was uplifted by many Arabic poets as an image of unjust collective suffering. Decades later, in 2021, Palestinian poet Najwan Darwish likewise made crucifixion the central image of his collection of poems, Exhausted on the Cross. Throughout this text, Darwish grapples with despair and uplifts resistance in the face of Israeli occupation, with all its tedious daily terrors interspersed with waves of escalated violence. He sees these decades of occupation as a long, drawn-out collective crucifixion, When will it end? When will Palestinians know rest? And maybe, just maybe, resurrection? In the first poem, They Awoke You at Dawn, Darwish imagines Christ as a fedai, an Arabic term for various military groups willing to sacrifice themselves for a larger movement. Here goes. They awoke you at dawn. When they woke you at dawn, when they hung you up for slaughter, Christ was a fedai, just like you. But he was condemned and crucified in the sea of a single day, while your cross is raised with every dawn. His name was on their blacklist. His mother slept on a pillow of nightmares. Which of these few women outside the Moscovia jail can catch her when she falls, hanging as she is from the farthest star of the cosmos? They've woken you at dawn again. They've hung you up for slaughter. In the second poem, Exhausted on the Cross, Darwish expands the image of crucifixion from a singular victim to all Palestinians. He sees the long decades of Israeli occupation as a drawn-out collective crucifixion. Christ's suffering is their suffering. Their suffering is Darwish's suffering. Here goes. Exhausted on the cross. The ones hanging are tired, so bring us down and give us some rest. We drag histories behind us here, where there's neither land nor sky. Lord, sharpen your knife and give your sacrifice its rest. You had no mother or father, and you never saw your brothers hanging from the cold talons of dawn. You loved no one, and no one ever abandoned you, and death never ate from your hands. You cannot know our pain. I'm not King David. I won't sit at the gate of regret and sing you psalms of lamentation after the sins. Bring me down. Let me have my rest. The last piece, titled An Opari for Christ, which speaks more directly to my location, is by Daniel Sukumar, a spoken word poet and a stage artist from Bangalore, India. For those who are not familiar, the word Opari refers to rhythmic lamentations sung by Dalit women at funerals. Here goes. An Opari for Christ. And did you die a Dalit's death? Were you stripped and flogged, tied to a pole like a thief? And did they make you drag your body as a testament to what happens when your love is too radical? And did you die a Dalit's death when the state washed its hands after touching you? And did they hoist that body up when the sun was still shining as an example of what happens when you ask for a place in the church? Ask for a place for the poor, the sick, the outcast, and the untouchable in the sham called a society? Were you stabbed after you died because even after all the bleeding, their thirst wasn't quenched? And did you die a Dalit's death, where your mother had to watch helplessly as a sword ran through her heart for the rest of her life? Did she hold the rest of your brothers close, hugged them a little longer, kissed their forehead a little harder, knowing that a Dalit's death might be written on them too? And did even God himself forsake you? And if you didn't know that Sunday was an Easter, that Sunday was resurrection, that on Sunday your body would be made whole, would you have still chosen a Dalit's death to die? Thank you. Can we have Zora Saeed next, please?
Hi, I hope I can keep it together with all the emotional stories. My name is Zora. I was born in Afghanistan. Thank you. I'm very short. Thank you. I won't touch it. I'm the grandchild of people from Turkestan that no longer exists, of course. They had fled and been refugees in Afghanistan themselves and had escaped massacres and cultural eradication of language, so our language is even different. So we came to Brooklyn, New York, where I want to talk about less my family, but more about Aziza, and I want to talk about activists who didn't always write and didn't always produce work or have a large audience, but Aziza was Palestinian. She was our neighbor, and she's the one who organized all the other housewives into protests around the school. My first, the first people who welcomed us was Aziza and her children, and there was a way of her including us and the kids in the same way her children were treated, so we got the same scoldings too, and the same food, and the same everything, so, and then when we were teenagers, the same scrutiny. So, but I loved her very much because she taught me how to stand up for myself. The first protest we did was in 3rd grade. I was at Sheepshead Bay High School. It was a very small one. But the protest really started because our 3rd grade teacher wanted us to do a cultural dance. And the cultural dance involved, I don't remember the song, but it involved a very big parachute-sized Israeli flag that we were going to spin around and sing a song to, but I was still new, so I didn't really understand the English or any other languages too much either. So when Aziza saw that I came with a list of things I had to buy and what it looked like, she's the one who stepped in and gathered all the other mothers. So we did our first protest in PS 254, Avenue Y. It was really a quiet place that had, it was an Italian, Irish, Jewish neighborhood, very conservative, and they did not like immigrants so much. So there we were causing trouble because of Aziza leading us. And there we were outside. I think it was only 3 or 4 families, and the color of the Palestinian flag and the Afghan flag are the same, except there's white missing in the Afghan flag, but it's black, red, and green. So we had enough paraphernalia to come out with black, red, and green as well, so we were set. But I'll never forget that protest. I mean, I was really young, and we didn't have placards, we didn't have anything, but it was so impactful because the principal didn't let us into the school grounds because we were not going to attend the dance or carry a flag, and the main point was that it was a flag we were carrying. So I just remember that we were standing in the colors outside of the fence and just standing there silently, and that was the main, that was the protest. But it was so powerful. Everyone was so afraid. They moved all the seats away. I mean, it was, Aziza was 5'2". She wasn't very tall. None of the women were very and there was also a lot of children and babies and strollers as well. So I'll never forget just that impact of just standing there with those colors to question the dance. It was still continuing. The flag was still there. But Aziza held firm, and I realized that, well, there's other Aziza stories. The other Aziza story, which I really love, is Muhammad, her youngest, came to Halloween, and she dressed him up in a thobe and a kafia, and he had a ghutra igal, all very cute 5-year-old, and he had a slingshot. And so the principal didn't know what to do with a 5-year-old with a slingshot. So, of course, the children, we came out first because we were there as the first kind of wall for the protest, or just in case something happened. And then I just remember all of the teachers really turning completely white when they saw, when they saw... When they saw Muhammad get on stage, and they're like, should we move him? Should we keep him? What do we do? This is 1980s. And they didn't know what to do with him, so they asked him. So Mr. Gitter went over, and he said, okay, so who are you? And he was very frightened about that, passing over the mic to a 5-year-old. And he said, I'm David. And and no one could say anything. He didn't win. My sister won, actually. She was PS 54, of course, my sister. She was actually the building. But I'll never forget Aziza because of the small ways of protest and the way she taught us to speak for and solidarity really came from there. She understood what Afghans were going through. I mean, when we were on the opposite spectrum, because Afghan militancy in the 80s was applauded. Everyone wore a pakol, and Rambo was there, and all these things are happening. But it was a 5-year-old boy with a slingshot and a keffiyeh that frightened the entire school. So I just want to bring up Aziza for that. So I dedicate all the work I've done, anything I've done in publishing. So I run Upset Press as well, and I met Suhair Hamad, our brave, wonderful poet, in college during a student protest, actually. And she was publishing this, Born Palestinian, Born Black. So, I mean, I don't know, I'm getting very emotional, but I wanted to read a poem of hers because she was so monumental in what she brought to poetry, how she built solidarity, especially with the Black community. And I wanted to read something from the Gaza suite as a way to wrap it up. We're going to reprint her book. I just want you to know, Upset Press is really terrible. We only publish when we have money, and we never really have money, so we have to work extra jobs, or Rob plays poker, and then we get money. So we will publish this in the summer. And then I learned crowdfunding, so I'll figure that out. So I wanted to read her poem from the 2011 version of Born Palestinian, Born Black, and it's based on the June Jordan poem, of course. So she had written a series called the Gaza Suite, and this is one called Rafa. There is a music to this all. The din has an order of orders, a human touch behind all arms, all of it manufactured, stars above all. Something melting, a dove molting, mourning through dusk, one child after another, gathered if possible, washed where possible, wrapped, there is always cloth, all the while prayed on, then pride from the women, always the women in the hot houses of a winter's war. The cameras leave with the men and the bodies always, the women somehow putting tea on fire, gathering the living children if possible, washing them when possible, praying on them, through their hair, into their palms, onto dear life, something fusing into dawn feathers, shed eyes, people in a high valence state. That's when breathing feeds burns. That's where settlers take high ground. That's how villages bulldoze betwixt holidays, before your eyes. High violence, holy children, lamb, an experience no longer inherited. Actual, earth in scorched concrete, heart in smoking beat. Thank you. I'm gonna, Christopher Stone, please, next.
Hi, everyone. My name's Christopher Stone. I'm a professor of Arabic at Hunter College of the City University of New York. I'm going to read a very famous but very short poem by the great Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish. I'm going to read it in Arabic, and then I'm going to read a translation of it in English. Despite being a professor of Arabic, my Arabic is not perfect. Maybe because I'm a professor of Arabic, my Arabic is not perfect. So bear with me as I read. But I tell my students, I started telling my students this year, studying Arabic, teaching Arabic, reading Arabic, writing Arabic, wearing Arabic is a form of resistance. The poem is called على هذه الأرض. على هذه الأرض ما يستحق الحياة. تردد إبريل. رائحة الخبز في الفجر. آراء امرأة في الرجال كتابات أسخيليوس أول الحب عشب على حجر أمهات تقفن على خيتيناي وخوف الغزاة من الذكريات على هذه الأرض ما يستحق الحياة نهاية أيلول سيدة تترك 40 بكامل مشمشها ساعة الشمس في السجن غيم يقلد سربا من الكائنات هتافات شعب لمن يصعدون إلى حتفهم باسمين وخوف الطغاة من الأغنيات على هذه الأرض ما يستحق الحياة على هذه الأرض سيدة الأرض أم البدايات أم النهايات كانت تسمى فلسطين صارت تسمى فلسطين سيدتي أستحق لأنك سيدتي أستحق الحياة. The translation is an amalgamation. It's not my translation. It's from different places on the web. My friend Robin Cresswell helped me with a few things as well. We have on this land that which makes life worth living, the aroma of bread at dawn, a woman's opinion of men, the writings of Aeschylus, the beginnings of love, moss on a stone, mothers who live on a flute's edge, and the invader's fear of memories. We have on this earth that which makes life worth living. September's end, a woman leaving 40 in full vitality, the hour of sunlight in prison, a cloud resembling a pack of creatures, the applause of a people who face their end with a smile, and the tyrant's fear of song. We have on this land that which makes life worth living, the mother of beginnings, the mother of endings. She was called Palestine. She came to be called Palestine. Madam, because you are mine, I am worthy of life. Thank you very much. And I'm very happy to introduce my old friend, Sunila Mubai. Tfaddali.
Let me figure out how do you make this higher. Height differences. Hi, so my name is Sunila Mubai. I'm translator, occasional scholar of Arabic literature, language, of Indian extraction, but Palestinian at heart. So I'm going to read a translation of mine of a poem by another very different Palestinian poet named Hussein al-Barghouti, whom some people may have heard of recently. He died tragically in 2002 of leukemia at the age of 48 during the Second Intifada, and some people may have heard of him because he has an autobiography, a very beautiful autobiography called El Daw al-Azraq, or The Blue Light, that was recently translated to English by Fadi Jouda. But what I'm going to read is something that I don't think has ever been read out loud before. It appeared in the last issue of the Journal of Palestine Studies, the Arabic Journal of Palestine Studies, in their special portfolio on Gaza. And this is a poem called Salam li Gaza, or Salam, hail, greetings to Gaza. And he wrote it during the first Intifada, which started in Gaza in late 1987. And it's kind of like it's not very triumphalistic, but it's also very, it gives hope, and there's something liturgical or hymn-like about it. So I'm going to do like what Huda did. I'm going to read back and forth between the Arabic and the English, and I'll read so this is my attempt at translating it, and I'd like the audience to help me. So the word salam repeats several times during the poem. So every time after I say a line with the word salam in it, I'd like people to repeat salam after me. And for those who don't know, I mean, salam can mean a lot of different things, right? It can mean peace, it can mean greeting, it can mean, it has a lot of connotations, and I think there's something very special about this poem, and it's meant to be read out loud. So I'm going to start. Salam to Gaza. My sister will live without me. My family will live without me. Part of me will live without me. The whole of me will live without me. Salam to those holding out in prison. My heart goes out to those who died inside, a sparrow's peck to those who remain. Peace be upon a stone, blue like ocean waves. Like the sky, like mountain goats' eyes, like flights of pigeons, peace be upon that stone, peace be upon it, upon it, upon it right now are the dreams of a land, hope of a nation. Peace be upon a stone encircled by flowers that girls' eyes reach out to embrace. Salam li Gaza. ستبقى بدون أختي ويبقى بدون أهلي ويبقى بدون جزئي ويبقى بدون كلي سلام لمن يصبر الآن في السجن وقلبي على من مات فيه وقبلة عصفور لمن يتبقى سلام على حجر مثل موج البحر أزرق مثل السماء مثل عيون الوعول وأسراب الحمام عليه السلام عليه السلام عليه السلام عليه الآن أحلام أرض وآمال أمة سلام على حجر حوله ضمة من زهور فإن عيون الصبايا تحاول ضمه. Salam to Gaza. The refugee camp lacks bread now, but it is enriched with blood. The camp lacks land and bread, but now it ascends to the skies. Salam to Gaza's doves. Where they flutter, they brush at my heart and drink of my water. To honor those who remain, silence outdoes words. Salamun li Gaza. فقر المخيم للخبز لكنه يغتني الآن بالدماء فقر المخيم للأرض والخبز لكنه الآن يصعد للسماء سلام لكل حمائم غزة حيث ترف تلامس قلبي وتشرب مائي وأعز من الكلام الصمت إجلالا لمن يتبقى Salam to a pair of eyelashes on a boy's face. Rafah eyelashes, wet with roses and tears. Salam to those offering their bodies to coffin bearers. And a sparrow's peck to those who remain. What can I offer to the cemetery? The road into it is the very road we take to depart like gods. The massacring hand cannot overpower the torrents of life. The streets, like the sparrows, stand still. They drink from rain whose free drops come from clouds floating free in a free sky. Salam to these trees. Their cry rings louder than my song. سلام لرمشين مبتلين بالدمع والورد في وجه طفل رفاحي الرموش. سلام لمن قدموا جسمهم للنعوش وقبلة عصفور لمن يتبقى. ماذا أقدم للمقبرة؟ إن الطريق إليها طريق لنخرج منها خروج الإله. ليست يد التذبيح أقوى من سحول الحياة. إن الشوارع مثل العصافير واقفة تشرب الآن من مطر حر النقاط وحر الغيوم وحر السماء. سلام لهذا الشجر فهو أطول من غنائي. Thank you. Free Gaza, free Palestine.
Hi, everyone. Thanks. My name is, okay, perfect, thanks. My name is Hafsa Kanjwal. I'm a historian of Kashmir. Thank you so much to the organizers for giving me the opportunity to speak. My thoughts are scattered, and words cannot do justice to express the heart-wrenching despair we have all felt watching a genocide being live-streamed on our screens for more than 7 months. Each of us in this room has felt things and seen things that perhaps we did not think were ever possible, not to even think of what the people of Gaza have endured. The resistance in Gaza, the brave people of Gaza, the people who are facing the utmost wrath of the most tyrannical forces in the world, have woken most of us up from a slumber that had made many of us complacent about our own complicities in systems of injustice, a slumber that made us think that the lives we were living were adequate and that we can carry on without thinking too much about where we work, how we spend, what we eat and drink. They have fundamentally transformed how we view the world, our place in it, our priorities, and our hopes. As a Kashmiri, for me, the bond with Palestine goes beyond the shared historical struggle or the realization that our oppressors, India and Israel, share tactics or that they work closely together. It is a bond that is rooted in a condition of possibility, of human resilience, spirit, and faith amidst ongoing colonization. As a Muslim, the past 7 months has been a spiritual roller coaster in trying to understand how to make sense of all of this. But the people of Gaza have shown us the way. And I think that is something that often doesn't get talked about. The faith of the people, how their steadfastness is rooted in a belief. The fact that they can see their entire family being bombed and say Alhamdulillah. That they pray in congregation next to a destroyed mosque during Ramadan. Or that the words recited by a 6-year-old girl, Hind Rajab, before she is mercilessly killed were from the Quran. And so I wanted to share something that I heard last October, a week or so into the genocide. It's a very abbreviated, and I hope I'm happy to share the longer version, English translation of part of a voice note from a woman in Gaza amidst bombardment. I don't know if she or her family survived. She says, I understand that you are sending me messages to strengthen my will, but I want to assure you that us here on the ground, we are the ones who will strengthen the people outside because we have arrived. We feel accomplished and our resolve is established. God has shown us things with our eyes. Tonight, it was a bombardment. I have never heard a sound as loud and terrifying as that. But I prayed to God that He will give my children safety, and I swear by God, none of my children woke up. The world around us is collapsing. It was in pieces and fragments with frightening sounds, but no one woke up. Don't worry about us and pray for us. We are the ones who need to make you steadfast. We pray you reach a stage when you are like us. May God honor you and make you reach the stage we are in. These 7+ months are showing us the path of steadfast resistance. It is not us who are here to free Gaza. It is Gaza that will liberate us. And for this, we too must be steadfast. Thank you. Omar Berada is next.
Are we doing the mic game again? Oh, it works. Hello, everyone. My name is Omar Berada. I'm a writer from Morocco, living in Brooklyn. People have been saying that Israel could not have carried out its genocidal campaign without shameful support from Arab states, most notably Egypt, for my purposes tonight. But all the others. This is one of many recurring motifs in the ongoing Nakba. For instance, back in 1955, there was a joint project by the UN and the Egyptian government to transfer Palestinian refugees from Gaza to the Sinai Desert. Of course, that was met by resistance and mass protests, of which one of the organizers was a prominent poet and communist activist from Gaza, Mouin Bsesso. For this and other actions, he spent a total of 7 years in Egyptian prisons. So I wanted to share with you brief excerpts from Bsesso's Palestinian notebooks, Dafatir Filistiniya, as an homage to him and also to an homage to Palestinian scholar and translator Salma Khadra Jayyusi, who in 1992 edited the massive Anthology of Modern Palestinian Literature, where I first read these words. So this is Mouin Bsesso in 1955. I couldn't believe that they would arrest a whole family, 4 sons belonging to the same mother and father. But arrest us they did, all of us. The driver of the jeep was a Sudanese soldier. I told him that we were 4 brothers. I don't know how, but he seemed aware already. He put his face between his hands and drove off, a repressed look in his eyes. We joined a long line of people who'd been arrested. The place had served as a stable during the British Mandate, but was transformed into torture chambers and annexed to the headquarters of the General Administrative Governor of the Gaza Strip. We proceeded in groups of 7, wearing prison clothes, with our heads shaved off. The cells they had prepared for us were 2 meters long and 3 meters wide. Into one of them, they pushed 7 prisoners, including me. We had to lie piled up on the concrete floor of the cell, one on top of the other. On that same day, 10 March 1955, the students of the Jabalia Elementary School in Gaza, where I taught, gathered in the playground and refused to enter their classrooms. No education without Mouin, they declared. These students would spend the next 3 days demonstrating. They were like a chair fighting a mill, a bird smacking into 1,000 walls. It feels as if you are falling to the bottom of a well. The Palestinian is killed in his sleep, but the dream always tells him, "You shall wake up." You fall deeper into the well. You hit the water. You wake up. What have they done to the Palestinian face? They shaved the hair off its head and its eyebrows, and while you stood naked before your companions, they mowed your pubic grass. The shaving machine that raised the Palestinian head was moving like a plow in the land of Palestine. I did not know those who were crammed into the cell with me, but when we woke up at 6 in the morning at the sound of the jailer's key and the feel of his lash, we knew we could be nothing but Palestinians. They denied us everything: contact with other detainees, writing letters, daily walks in the prison courtyard. During their daily walks, both the communists and the Muslim brothers would throw us packs of cigarettes and wave to us. Anyone who waves to you while you're in hell is like someone who shakes a palm tree between your hands. They began moving the Muslim brethren away. One day, Sayyid Qutb left and never returned. The wind coming from Gaza began blowing the smell of the lily that grew on the Gaza shore our way. It began to carry good news for us. And just as no patient remains forever in hospital, no prisoner remains forever in prison. The first batch of Palestinian detainees was released. We began to feel our turn was drawing near, that soon we would be traveling on the train home. We were set free on the 1st of July, 1957. I realized then that the train was the most beautiful of man's inventions, and that coal was a cake you wanted to cut with a knife and eat with a fork. I went to the house of my uncle Asim. I was carrying a bundle that contained all I owned: a shirt, a toothbrush, and a piece of soap. When I came in, they thought I was a door-to-door salesman, but I had nothing to sell. My aunt, Wazifa, recognized me. She opened her arms, and I fell into them. I left the door of the room open, opened all the windows, and slept. I woke up the following evening. For the first time after 2 years and 2 months of detention, I slept while hearing the roar of the sea. Blessed be the sea. Thank you. And please welcome Anna Arabinden-Kesson.
Thank you. I'm Anna. I'm grateful to be here with you all. Sorry, I don't have a very loud voice, even with the mic. I'm on faculty in the African American Studies Department and Art History Department at Princeton, where today 2 our students have been told to take down their encampment. But the movement continues. I stand here as a mother, as a former nurse, as an educator, in solidarity with Palestine and with Palestinians who have been for decades working and fighting, building movements of justice and liberation, movements that will dismantle the colonial frameworks of extraction and exploitation that have defined the nation states that have defined me. I stand with the students across the world, with my students, who are showing us new ways of forging solidarity, strength, and community. I also stand here as a Sri Lankan Tamil. We also know what it is to face annihilation, to watch and have survived the massacres of our communities in a genocide that lasted for decades and culminated in the final stages of the Sri Lankan Civil War that took place 15 years ago today. I hear the same rhetoric. I see the same forms of dehumanization being wielded again. The same arguments about consensus and numbers used to obfuscate and deflect attention away from the horror, the terror, the brutality perpetuated against children, women, men, against people whose lives we remember here. Palestine is the world, and to be here, to be in solidarity, is to build that world. Because in a past life, my job was to actually repair bodies and ensure people's survival, and because I do this now in much smaller and much more familiar ways, I've been thinking a lot about woundedness, about living with wounds and with the wounded. In circulation recently have been words about the connection between Gaza and gauze, the wound dressing. But really, gauze refers to a weave structure, to a pattern of woven construction that can be used even with light, delicate threads to create something strong and stable, a material that can cover, a material that can be kept firm and in place. Gauze does not repair, but it holds together. Its strength is in its fragility, and its tensile protection comes from its delicacy. It absorbs and bears up against the injurious. And so when I think about that woven structure of the threads doubled up, tightened and interlocked, I think too of the interlinked arms of protesters, the tightly held hands of children found in rubble, entwined fingers of community members reaching towards each other. I think of the ways people exiled, displaced, facing extermination, continue to hold together, to find what June Jordan called living room. And so I just want to leave you with some of her words from her poem, Moving Towards Home. She says, I need to speak about home. I need to speak about living room, where the land is not bullied and beaten to a tombstone. I need to speak about living room, where the talk will take place in my language. I need to speak about living room, where my children will grow without horror. I need to speak about living room, where the men of my family, between the ages of 6 and 65 are not marched into a roundup that leads to the grave. I need to talk about living room where I can sit without grief, without wailing aloud for my loved ones. I need to talk about living room because I need to talk about home. I was born a black woman and now I am become a Palestinian. Against the relentless laughter of evil, there is less and less living room. And where are my loved ones? It is time to make our way home. And next up is Ji Ling Kao.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Ji Leong Ko. I am originally from Singapore, and even though public expression is very much restricted in my country, yet activists have found ways around those restrictions, such as organizing a Palestinian film festival to bring attention to Gaza. As the editor of the journal Suspect, I was very honored to publish 2 poems by Paul Catafago, US-based Palestinian Lebanese poet, last December. I'm just going to read the last part of one of these poems entitled, Remember Us. Read our poems, eat our foods, wear clothes without embroidery, bear witness to who you know us to be. Remember how, when you came and stayed with us, we laughed so much, and how much we loved life. So remember all of that, and do not pity us now. Just stand with us and remember who we were and who we will always be. Remember our strength and our resolve. Remember we taught you a word in Arabic that is particular to our people, sumud, which means steadfastness. Remember our sumud, how steadfast we are. Remember when you left us, we told you to come back, to return. Remember, we too shall return. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Siddharth Deb. I'm a novelist, a journalist, and I usually write about India and the Hindu nationalism in India. And a few years ago, I went to the state of Assam in India to do a story, and it's a state where my father had been a refugee as a 21-year-old in 1947. And I was interviewing these young Bengali Muslim activists, poets, often first generation, to be educated. And one of the things they did in response to the incredible vilification they faced from the state, from the media, was that they read a lot. And I asked them, what did they read? And what were they inspired by? And they said Hannah Arendt, Gil Scott Heron, and Mahmoud Darwish. And so I'm actually the last speaker because we're running out of time, but do stay for the drums by Kesavan Naidu just after this. But I just thought I would just read a very, very short poem by Mahmoud Darwish. And many of you know this, and I will read in English translation. It's called Where Should the Birds Fly After the Last Sky? The earth is closing on us, pushing us through the last passage, and we tear off our limbs to pass through. The earth is squeezing us. I wish we were its wheat so we could die and live again. I wish the earth was our mother so she'd be kind to us. I wish we were pictures on the rocks for our dreams to carry as mirrors. We saw the faces of those who will throw our children out of the window of this last space. Our star will hang up mirrors. Where should we go after the last frontiers? Where should the birds fly after the last sky? Where should the plants sleep after the last breath of air? We will write our names with scarlet steam. We will cut off the hand of the song to be finished by our flesh. We will die here, here in the last passage. Here and here our blood will plant its olive tree. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for having me here. It's a real big honor. I'm from South Africa. I'm a drummer composer. I used to play with Maria Makeba, and I grew up in apartheid, so kind of have a lot of solidarity for my brothers and sisters over there in Palestine. Oh, sorry, jeez, it's crazy. So this piece that I wrote is called Freedom Dance, and I was commissioned to do this by the city of Cape Town. It was written about Mandela's first speech, which you'll hear some of the samples I was given when he was released from prison in 1990. And I remember that day clearly, and I was very honored to be given this speech to write music to. And it's written for like jazz orchestra and all fancy things. It was played at Carnegie Hall and everything, but today I'm just going to play it on the drums from my heart because of what's happening. And I just wanted to just say, like, back then, Mandela was known as a terrorist. We all know that was a lie. And so there was a lot of lies, and I think there's a lot of lies happening right now. But the thing is, the real struggle is to kind of dispel those lies. And, you know, like, war's not won on the battlefield, it's actually won in the minds of the people. And if with the relentlessness of being unified and disciplined, we can actually overcome any forms of tyranny. You know, I believe that in it, and we did that in South Africa. We're still struggling, and we're still on a mission, but, you know, there's the forces out there, like the police states and the armies, they know how to deal with violence, but they don't know, they can't deal with relentless unity. And at the end, that always wins. So I just want to give you hope that that's possible. And I'd like to play this piece for the freedom of the people of Palestine, because without, you can't have freedom without peace. You can't have peace without justice. Justice is difficult without democracy, and democracy is impossible without equality.
I have fought against white domination. And I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the idea of a democratic and free society in which all nations live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve. But if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die. Our struggle has reached a decisive moment. We call on our people to seize this moment so that the process towards democracy is rapid and uninterrupted. We have waited too long for our freedom. We can no longer wait. Now is the time to intensify the struggle on all fronts. To relax our efforts now would be a mistake which generations to come will not be able to forgive. The sight of freedom looming on the horizon should encourage us to redouble our efforts. It is only through disciplined mass action that our victory can be assured. Our march to freedom is irreversible. We must not allow fear to stand in our way.
Thank you.
For those of you still here, the paper in your hand as a QR code, so please consider donating to both of the fundraisers. Again, thank you so much for being here. And yeah, I think this brings us to the end of today. Bhakti, do you want to come? Yeah, thank you for coming and thank you for being here. Thank you for crying, laughing, and just breathing together in community. It's been an honor. Thank you.